Shri Guru Charana Saroja Raja Nijamanu Mukuru Sudhari Baranon Raghubara Bimala Jasu Jodaya Kupalachari Buddhihina Tanu Janike Sumiro Pavana Kumara Bala Buddhi Vidya Dehu Mohin Harahu Kale Sabikara Jai Hanumana Gyana Guna Sangara Jai Kapi Sati Uloka Ujagara Ramaduta Atulita Baladhamma Anjani Putra Pavana Sutanama Mahabira Pikarama Bajarangi Kumati Nivara Sumati Ke Sangi Kanchana Barana Biraja Subesa Kanana Kundala Kunchita Kesa Ata Bajra Udwaja Biraje Kanda Munja Jane Usaje Shankara Suvani Kesari Nandan Teja Pratapa Mahajagabandan Vidyavana Guni Ati Chatura Rama Kaja Karibeko Atura Prabhu Charitra Sunibeko Rasya Ram Lakhan Sita Manabasya Sukshma Rupa Tarisiya Hindikava Pikata Rupa Tari Lanka Jarava Bhima Rupa Tari Asura Samhare Ramachandra Ke Kaj Sambhare Laya Sajivana Lakana Jiyaya Shri Raghubira Harasha Uralaye Raghupati Kinhi Bahuta Barai Tuma Mama Priya Bharatahi Samabai Sahasapadana Tumaro Jasagave Asikahi Shri Patakanta Lagave Jai Sitaram, Jai Sitaram, Jai Sitaram, Jai Sitaram, Jai Sitaram, Jai Sitaram, Jai 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 Sitaram, Jai Sitaram, Jai Sitaram, Jai Sitaram, Jai Sitaram, Jai Sitaram, Jai 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 O Naunai Kala Mekalehua E Halelehua no Yanata no O Tauno Ia no Ine Eli Ane Hoyo Taiti Mai Ahiti Mai no Ko Ahiti Puno Me Ke Aloha Alohae Alohae Alohae
Aloha everyone. This is a prayer in Hawaiian for the great Mahatma Gandhi, celebrating his birthday and the International Day of Nonviolence. Let us pray. E pulikako. Maka inoa no o kamakua meki keiki, meka uhane he mulele, mahalo ne mako ia oi. Noka malama ya e ne ka mako lakino. E ho'omohala mai ka mako halavai, meka na au mai kalani, meka ho'opo mai kai. Our most gracious Heavenly Father, blessed be thy name. We thank you for all of your blessings, and humbly we ask your blessing on this gathering and on this day of celebration of the International Day of Nonviolence. Father, we thank you for sending thy messenger, the great Mahatma Gandhi, to us. Humbly we ask that his spirit of peace and love and aloha permeate the world, so that thy mission of peace in the world may be accomplished through all of thy servants on this earth. And we ask that this day of celebration and our webinar be successful, that we may change the minds and hearts of people around the world. Those things we pray. No kamea, no kia puni, ame kamana, ame ka ho'onani ia amalo atu. Amen and amen.
I shall recite the national anthem of India. Janagana mana adhinayaka jaya he Bharat bhagya vidhata Punjab Sindh Gujarat Maratha Dravida Utkal Banga Vindhya Himachal Yamuna Ganga Uchala Jaladita Ranga Tava Shubha Name Jage Tava Shubha Ashish Mage Gahe Tava Jaya Gatha Janagana Mangala Dayaka Jaya He Bharat Bhagya Vidhata Jaya He Jaya He Jaya He Jaya 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 He. Mahalo.
Aloha and welcome. On behalf of Gandhi International Institute for Peace and Still and Moving Center, we welcome you to our 16th Gandhi Day celebration 2021. This year's 152nd birthday celebration honoring Gandhi's legacy draws inspiration from the following quote: "The human voice can never reach the distance that is covered by the still small voice of conscience." As a global leader, Gandhi taught us in words and most powerfully by example to live mindfully, non-violently, in harmony with one another, and listening to what he called that still small voice of conscience. We're thrilled to have you join us today as we meditate, listen, and gain inspiration from world-renowned guest speakers and performers, including our keynote speakers, Tushar A. Gandhi, the great-grandson of the Mahatma, and Audrey E. Kitagawa. Alongside these prestigious guests, we will also welcome Professor Ramdas, Professor Veena Howard, Professor Marc Gilbert, Hawai'i Representative Matthew LoPresti, Dr. Kahu Kaleo Patterson, as well as GIIP founder Kumar. A guided meditation will be led by Miku Lenentine, and performances will be given by Zeni Okersek, Willow Chang, Baba Gibbs, and Roger Sinha. To start us off, Dr. Kumar, the founder and emeritus president of Gandhi International Institute for Peace, Honolulu. Dr. Kumar is the liaison for the sister state friendship relationship between Hawaii and the state of Goa. He is president of the Indian American Friendship Council Hawaii chapter and serves on the advisory board of the Interfaith Alliance Hawaii. He laid the foundation of GIIP 20 years ago on September 11, the day the Twin Towers were attacked. Since then, the GIIP's mission has been to raise awareness about peace and nonviolence. The United Nations General Assembly on June 15, 2007, established Mahatma Gandhi's birthday, October 2nd, as the annual International Day of Nonviolence. In 2015, Raj and the GIIP initiated a bill in the Hawaii legislature to establish October 2nd as Mahatma Gandhi Day, which was signed into effect by the Honorable Governor David Ige, making Hawaii the first state in the United States to declare October 2nd as Mahatma Gandhi Day. An author of numerous books, Raj plans to release his latest work on Mahatma Gandhi, titled Anger and Nonviolence, in 2021. Through the magic of Zoom, we are engaging in a worldwide and island-wide event. Let's come together and each tune into our inner voice, calling us to bring peace to this world. As Gandhi stated, everyone who wills can hear the inner voice. It is within everyone. Ladies and gentlemen, Dr. Kumar.
Aloha and namaste, viewers from Hawaii and all across the world. On behalf of Gandhi International, I would like to welcome you all to our 16th annual event to commemorate the 152nd birthday of one of the greatest leaders in world history, Mahatma Gandhi, and to celebrate International Day of Nonviolence. I want to thank Hawaii Senate President Honorable Ron Kochi, Senators Brian Taniguchi and Mike Gilbert, House Representative Matthew LoPresti, who have sent us certificates honoring and commending GIIP for its efforts to serve Hawaii by championing the cause of nonviolence and reminding Hawaii and the world of the true aloha spirit. Mahatma Gandhi needs no long introduction. Everyone knows about the man who is apostle of nonviolence and led the Indian people to independence from British rule in August 1947. For Gandhi, nonviolence was not simply the absence of physical violence. It is also self-rule and radical democracy in which everyone participates in the governance process. He believed that self-rule should extend to all people, rich and poor, male and female, and at all levels of society. To him, domination over others was a form of violence. Gandhi introduced to the world the concept of ahimsa, which means you do not harm others in your thoughts, words, and actions, and satyagraha, peaceful civil disobedience. These principles, plus his constant striving for religious harmony, social justice, and eternal truth, raised the consciousness of millions of Indians. When Gandhi went on a fast until death in 1947 in Calcutta to stop deadly riots in the city between Hindus and Muslims, the killing actually stopped. British historian E.W.R. Lumby has called the fast perhaps the greatest miracles of modern times. The Salt March of 1930 is one of the Gandhi's best-known acts of peaceful resistance. Under colonial rule, the British taxed Indians for salt and declared that making or collecting salt was illegal. Since salt is necessary for survival, this issue affected each and every Indian. They considered this law unjust and morally wrong. Gandhi organized a 241-mile march across western India to the city of Dandi in Gujarat, where he collected salt illegally. He started the march with only 78 people, but as the marchers proceeded, thousands more joined. Weeks later, his unarmed followers marched to a government salt depot, where they met violent retaliation by the police. Hence, this drew worldwide sympathy. Fortunately for humanity, his legacy did not die with him. Instead, his influence extended far beyond India's borders and inspired two generations of leaders ranging from Martin Luther King Jr. and Nelson Mandela to follow his path in their struggles for justice and freedom. Martin Luther King Jr. was among Gandhi's biggest disciples. King stated that while Jesus gave him message, Gandhi showed him the method. King said, "The greatest Christian of the modern world was a man who never embraced Christianity." Martin Luther King Jr. employed Gandhi's ways of nonviolence resistance. In the US, Americans watched with horror as Birmingham police set dogs upon African Americans during a peaceful civil rights protest in 1963. This pushed President Kennedy to take action and eventually led to the Civil Rights Act of 1964. Another American who took inspiration from Gandhi was labor leader Cesar Chavez. Chavez called Gandhi the most perfect man ever beside Christ, and repeatedly used Gandhi's methods, including peaceful civil action, massive boycotts, and hunger strikes. In his struggle for justice for Chicano farm workers, he succeeded. Presently, the world is going through a major turmoil and is being threatened by coronavirus, climate change, global terrorism, and war. We see a lot of violence and assaults on women and children in Afghanistan. All peaceful nations need to stand up and fight together against these crimes against humanity. and against those nations who harbor, train, and provide a safe haven to these terrorists. I was stunned and saddened when terrorists attacked the Twin Towers in New York on September 11, 2001. My inner voice of conscience told me that I needed to do more to promote peace and nonviolence in the modern world. Hence, I established this Peace Institute by organizing an interfaith peace service at Pakihale in Waikiki on the next day, September 12, 2001. Today, Gandhi's spirit has been kept alive by organizations like ours, GIIP, and dedicated followers, both inside and outside India, who continue to use his message and methods in their quest for social justice and peace. Gandhi has become an iconic figure for people seeking justice, social change, including communities across the United States. I would like to conclude by encouraging the world to rededicate itself to Gandhi's ideals 73 years after his death: nonviolence, tolerance, truth, and peaceful resistance to injustice. I would like to thank participants, event organizers, everyone who have supported us, and of course, the viewers without whom this virtual event could not have been possible. Thank you for all your love and support all these years. Please stay safe during this pandemic. May peace prevail on earth. Thank you and mahalo.
Message from U.S. Senator Mazie K. Hirono in honor of Mahatma Gandhi Day celebration. Aloha and welcome to everyone viewing and participating in the Gandhi International Institute for Peace's virtual ceremony today. On this day, the 152nd birthday of Mahatma Gandhi, we remember and commemorate his legacy of nonviolent resistance in the face of oppression. The legacy of his work carries on today as people across the world continue to find inspiration in his teachings on civil rights, freedom, and peace. Now more than ever, we must draw from the lessons of Gandhi as we face incredible challenges in today's world. In the words of Gandhi, quote, "The future depends on what you do today," close quote. I hope that we all take those words to heart as we continue to strive for change and justice. Together, we can build upon his work as we create a brighter and more inclusive future. Mahalo to the Gandhi International Institute for Peace for their continued efforts to promote peace in Hawaii, and to everyone who worked to make this event possible. My best wishes to you for all your continued successes and for a memorable event. Aloha. Mazie K. Hirono, United States Senator.
Aloha. I will now read the official proclamation by the Honorable Governor David Ige of Hawaii. Whereas Mohandas Karamchand Gandhi was born in India on October 2nd, 1869, and whereas Gandhi inspired human rights movements around the world with his philosophy of passive resistance, satyagraha, to achieve political and social progress, seek truth in a spirit of peace and love, and remain firm and resilient in the face of adversity. Whereas on June 15, 2007, the United Nations passed a resolution and declared October 2nd as International Day of Nonviolence. And whereas on September 11, 2001, Dr. Kumar of Oahu laid the foundation for the Gandhi International Institute for Peace in Hawaii to provide information, consultation, education, and training to resolve conflict in a non-violent manner. And whereas GIIP has organized annual peace conferences and events to support and encourage nonviolence in Hawaii, and whereas in 2015, Hawaii became the first state in the nation to officially declare Mohandas Karamchand Gandhi Day, better known as Mahatma Gandhi Day, to commemorate Mahatma Gandhi's life and works. And whereas the state of Hawaii understands the importance of cultural understanding and international peace as shown by the establishment of a sister state relationship with Goa, India, and Hawaii through a state legislature resolution in 2016. Therefore, I, David White Ige, Governor of the State of Hawaii, do hereby proclaim October 2nd, 2021 as Mahatma Gandhi Day. in Hawaii and ask the people of the Aloha State to join me in celebrating the legacy of Mohandas Karamchand Gandhi, practice tolerance and understanding, and recognize the strength of nonviolence with peaceful and positive actions. Done at the state capitol in the Executive Chambers, Honolulu, state of Hawaii, this second day of October, 2021.
Namaste. Om Bhurbhuva Swaha Tatsaviturvarenyam Bhargo Devasya Dhimahi Diyo Yo Nah Prachodayat. Om Bhurbhuva Swaha Tatsaviturvarenyam Bhargo Devasya Dhimahi Diyo Yo Nah Prachodayat. Om Bhurbhuva Swaha Tatsaviturvarenyam Bhargo Devasya Dhimahi Diyo Yo Nah Prachodayat. Namaste.
Following Dr. Kumar's speech, we were gifted by the performance of a beautiful mantra sung by yoga educator, musician, and sound healer, Zeni Ogerseg. With a passion for sacred music, Zeni plays the piano, the harp, the harmonium, and the Tibetan singing bowls, though her main instrument is her voice. She has a gift for Sanskrit chanting and conducts kirtan and chanting sessions all over Oahu. Next, we are blessed to welcome our first keynote speaker, Tushar A. Gandhi. Tushar A. Gandhi is the great grandson of Mahatma Gandhi and the son of journalist Arun Manalal Gandhi. Author, peace activist, and Gandhi storyteller, he is the founder and president of Mahatma Gandhi Foundation in Jalgaon, Maharashtra, India. President of the Lok Seva Trust, which is an NGO established in central Bombay in the mid-50s for the welfare of the textile mill laborers, as well as the director of the Gandhi Research Foundation in Mumbai, India. In March 2005, he led the 75th anniversary reenactment of the Dandi March. He often calls himself an ordinary descendant of great ancestors. Mr. Tushar A. Gandhi.
Greetings to all of you who have gathered today to felicitate the International Day of Nonviolence, which is Gandhi Jayanti, the birthday of my great-grandfather Mahatma Gandhi, whom I call Bapu. It is irony that after declaring 2nd October as the International Day of Nonviolence, neither the UN nor those who are signatories on that declaration have bothered to actually make it into a significant International Day of Nonviolence. Now, no procedures, no guidelines have been issued, and nobody in sincerity is observing that day as nonviolence. Even amongst people, it has now become a ritual where merely it is mentioned and talks about nonviolence are given, but in our actions we do not see the manifestations of nonviolence even for that one particular day. It seems as if it has become too much for humanity to even dedicate or devote 24 hours to the practice of nonviolence. Nonviolence doesn't merely mean no conflict. Although broadly speaking, conflicts are seen as the manifestation of violence. But nonviolence, the ideal of nonviolence is to lead a life which does not violate, does not impinge upon anybody else's space, does not make anybody else give up something so that somebody else can enjoy that. That is the essence of nonviolence, and that is a kind of nonviolence that all of us can aspire to live by. And that is what is required today. In an island state like Hawaii, I don't have to mention the dangers we face from climate change and global warming. Hawaii's existence is now threatened by the fallout of global warming and climate change. And so it is a result of the continuing violence of our lifestyle, our materialistic lifestyle, our consuming lifestyle. We are consuming the resources, we are consuming the share of other life forms to nature and our environment, and we are destroying that fragile system which we have taken for granted. And that is one of the greatest acts of violence that humankind has committed on our environment and life forms. And we must, at least on this day, become aware and audit our own actions and how we are destroying our own lives and the lives on which other life forms have an equal share and justification, how we are denying them that also. And so, if at all there is a significance to this day of nonviolence, then these are the thoughts that we have to keep reminding ourselves of, and the violence of our prejudices, the violence of our greed, the violence of our actions, the violence of our language, and the violence of our thoughts. All this have to be taken into account, because the ultimate conflict that results is a total of all these forms of violence. Spiritualism was very dear to Bapu, and he believed in the religious practice of spiritualism. But his spiritualism and religious practices were way beyond the constrained format of religion that we have now adopted. And he subscribed to the religion of humanity, of life form, of the earth itself, the forces that came about to create life on this earth. That force was his deity and his religion. And for him, religious practices, the greatest religious practice was service, selfless service to humankind. And so, even while praying to God, he evolved a system of praying where it would become productive. Generally, even the people who are spiritually inclined and meditate and do meditation and chanting and things, we confine ourselves to that activity which doesn't produce anything, doesn't create anything. But in Bapu's form of worship, while the prayers happened, while the chanting of Lord's name happened, he engaged in the activity of spinning khadi. And he actually produced the yarn from which cloth was made, which was used to clothe himself. And so he turned his spiritualism and his meditation into a productive time also. We must also remember that we pride ourselves at being able to multitask. But in many things, we confine our activity and convince ourselves that no, we just have to do this, and at that time we cannot do anything else. That is an excuse that we make because we do not want to challenge ourselves. And so if we convince ourselves that every moment that we live, every breath we take, we can be productive too at that time while doing other things, then we will create a sustainable lifestyle which will go towards producing our needs rather than us being merely consumptive and consume all the resources and gifts of nature and the fruits of nature that we've taken for granted for so many centuries now, ever since civilization happened. Sometimes I wonder how misleading this entire definition of civilization is, because after human beings became civilized, they became consumers, they became users of everything that was provided to them. They did not bother about conserving things. They did not bother about limiting their wants. And that greed has seen to the downfall of many civilizations. We are also on that precipice where we don't know whether we will jump off in the future or we have taken the jump of no return already. This and events like the International Day of Nonviolence and Gandhi Jayanti remind us to take stock. So as you gather today, please think about all these things and try to make a difference to life from tomorrow. My best wishes to all of you, and thank you very much for this opportunity. I hope what I had to say, I was able to convey to you the message of Gandhi, my great-grandfather, my Bapu. Thank you very much.
Our second keynote speaker today, Audrey E. Kitagawa, Juris Doctorate, is the president-founder of the International Academy of Multicultural Cooperation, president of the Light of Awareness International Spiritual Family, and recipient of the Spirits of the United Nations Award for demonstrating the vision and spirit of the UN as expressed through the UN Charter and its Universal Declaration of Human Rights. She is also chair of the Anti-Racism Initiative, co-chair of the Gender Equality Working Group of the G20 Interfaith Forum, UN representative for the United Religions Initiative, an ambassador of Religions for Peace International, as well as former UN advisor to the Office of the Special Representative of the Secretary General for Children and Armed Conflict at the UN. It is a distinct honor to have her join us today. Audrey E. Kitagawa.
Hello, everyone from New York City, where I am currently situated. I was born and raised in Honolulu, Hawaii, and I am especially pleased to have this moment in time to be back in Honolulu virtually to commemorate the UN International Day of Nonviolence in honor of Mahatma Gandhi, whose birthday is celebrated on October 2nd. My deepest appreciation to Joanne Tachibana, President of the UN USA Association Hawaii Chapter, for this invitation to share this special day with all of you. The UN General Assembly, in a resolution adopted on June 5, 2007, established this commemoration as an important occasion to disseminate the message of nonviolence, including through education and public awareness. The resolution reaffirms the universal relevance of the principle of nonviolence and the desire to secure a culture of peace, tolerance, and understanding. Gandhi said, "Nonviolence is the greatest force at the disposal of mankind. It is mightier than the mightiest weapon of destruction devised by the ingenuity of man." Gandhi's description of it as the greatest force and mightier than the mightiest weapon evokes an image that is powerful, active, dynamic, and intentional. According to a UN Peace Day article, in practice, nonviolence involves actively peaceful behavior in the midst of conflict, becoming an example of consideration to those around us, and breaking the destructive cycle of retaliation when we believe we have been wronged. It also means awareness of our own inner violence and eliminating its negative effects upon our own intentions. Applying these principles of nonviolence can reduce conflict, anger, and violence on personal, local, national, and global levels. Gandhi was the first person to bring the practice of nonviolence to an immense social and political scale, enabling the independence of India and Pakistan in 1947. We consider Gandhi a master of nonviolence, but Gandhi himself understood the complications of violence in our world and was constantly committed to the practice of ahimsa, which generally translate to nonviolence, but more literally translates from Sanskrit as absence of injury. According to the Metta Center for Nonviolence, Ahimsa stands for love in action and should be translated more as the force unleashed when desire to harm is eradicated. The concept of ahimsa has always been an essential spiritual precept, especially in the religions of Hinduism, Jainism, and Buddhism. The practice of ahimsa was lifelong for Gandhi, one that required discipline, self-sacrifice, and self-purification, and one that was difficult to master. Gandhi inspired subsequent peace movements, organizations, and the study of and commitment to nonviolence as a means to end political conflict. Martin Luther King Jr. called Gandhi a guiding light. He said that Gandhian philosophy was the only morally and practical sound method open to oppressed people in their struggle for freedom. In his remarks at the event, Leadership Matters, the relevance of Mahatma Gandhi in the contemporary world, UN Secretary General Antonio Guterres shared, Gandhiji's vision and philosophy are pillars of the work of the United Nations. Part of his genius lay in his ability to see the interconnectedness and the unity between all things. His political achievements, including leading the movement that ended colonial rule in India, using peace, love, and integrity to prevail. But his vision went far beyond politics to encompass human rights and sustainable development. We thank all of the proponents for peace who show us that nonviolence has worked in the past and will work again. We thank Gandhi for opening the door to this whole new field of freedom through nonviolent means. As we continue to discover exciting new avenues and insights of nonviolence as a political and social tool, may we always remember that we must incorporate it into our personal lives every single day, just as Gandhi did. As we practice nonviolence in our thoughts, speech, and actions, we're actually practicing love, compassion, and empathy. Nonviolence towards ourselves and others is a spiritual practice and honors the sacredness of life. Gandhi's practice of nonviolence endures to the succeeding generations through which he still lives, to the immortality of his great legacy. Thank you so much, everyone. And I bid you a fond aloha.
Proclamation. Whereas Mahatma Gandhi was born on October 2nd, 1869, and is regarded as one of the most important political and spiritual leaders of his time for pioneering the concept of resistance to tyranny throughout peaceful non-cooperation. And whereas in 2007, the United Nations General Assembly established the International Day of Nonviolence, which is a global observance to promote nonviolence through education and public awareness held on October 2nd in honor of Mahatma Gandhi's birthday. And whereas Governor David Y. Ige signed in Act 005 into law in 2015, making Hawaii the first state to designate October 2nd as Mahatma Gandhi Day in honor of his champion of freedom, justice, and human rights. And whereas Honolulu's Gandhi International Institute for Peace and the Still and Moving Center are presenting International Day of Nonviolence and the Gandhi Day celebration on October 2nd, 2021. And whereas the webinar event will feature keynote speakers Tushar A. Gandhi and Audrey E. Kitagawa, JD, and a variety of other engaging speakers and inspiring presentations of music and dance. Now, therefore, I, Rick Blangiardi, Mayor of the City and County of Honolulu, do hereby proclaim October 2nd, 2021 to be Mahatma Gandhi Day, an International Day of Nonviolence, in honor of the life and achievement of this champion of freedom, human rights, and social change, and to extend deep appreciation to the Gandhi International Institute of Peace and the Still and Moving Center and everyone involved in presenting this special tribute and celebration done on the second day of October 2021 in Honolulu, Hawaii, Rick Blangiardi.
An experienced meditation practitioner and circle facilitator, Miku Lenentine, was raised in a mindfulness tradition and has guided meditation, movement, and community dialogue circles since 2013. Deeply passionate about living in harmony with the self, others, and all beings, she truly believes that each one of us contains the seeds of wisdom for the universe. Master drummer and percussionist Babadoc Gibbs heard a new rhythm following his highly successful musical career. After recording as the lead percussionist and key musician for Al Jarreau, Anita Baker, Erykah Badu, Wyclef Jean, and many others, New Directions called the Babadoc. He combined his multitude of experiences into a program of healing through sound. This easy and natural transition for him has benefited everyone along his path. So this next segment involves a guided meditation, followed by a sound journey. Let Miku and Babadoc guide you in accessing that little voice of conscience, that wisdom that you already hold within yourself.
Hello, my name is Miku Lenentine, and I'm a meditation guide at the Still and Moving Center. Today, I'm going to be guiding you through a really short practice in honor of Gandhi's birthday. And we will start off by reading a card from the Gandhi and Nonviolence Discovery Card deck to help us set the theme for our practice today. And the title of this card is Phoenix Settlement and Tolstoy Farm. So it starts out like this. You must not lose faith in humanity. Humanity is an ocean. If a few drops of the ocean are dirty, the ocean does not become dirty. You must have faith in humanity. In 1904, Gandhi and his colleagues founded the Phoenix Settlement, an intentional living community in South Africa. Gandhi was profoundly moved reading John Ruskin's Unto the Last, which champions a simple life of love and manual labor with a focus on the dignity of human beings. The Tolstoy Farm was a second community that Gandhi established in South Africa, and members of these communities took vows. They took, in fact, 11 vows, and the first of these vows was, of course, what Gandhi is most famous for and well known is the vow of nonviolence. In addition to that, they also took vows towards non-stealing, self-discipline, non-possession, and also manual labor and other such vows. Gandhi established these spiritual communities to study and learn how to provide a working model of what a sustainable, loving, and courageous community could be like. And the inquiry associated with this particular card is about your commitment and your vows. And so the inquiry today then is, what vow would you consider taking? What vow would you consider taking? So I'm going to guide us through a short practice based on a type of meditation called reflection meditation. I chose this meditation because it's most in alignment with Gandhi's commitment towards truth. Reflection meditation has us guiding ourselves, having that searchlight within, guiding deeply into our minds and focusing on an inquiry, focusing on a particular question. So we'll dive into this inquiry of what vows you might have and what your own commitments are in this very short practice today. So take a moment to help yourself get settled, find a nice tall spine, roll the shoulders down and back, and let's begin with the breath. Taking a slow, deep breath in, and a slow, deep breath out. Again, finding a slow, deep inhalation in, and a slow, deep exhalation out. Keep breathing at your own pace, slow, deep breaths. And as you breathe, begin to shift your focus to your mind. Allow the mind to become empty. Allow the mind to focus on complete emptiness. Breathing in emptiness. Breathing out emptiness. And begin to focus on this question. What are my vows? What am I committed to? What are my vows? What am I committed to? I vow. And just complete the sentence, I vow to. And allow the mind to focus on this question. What are my vows? What am I committed to? I vow to. I vow to. And so wherever you are in this inquiry, we'll allow our unconscious mind to keep working with this question, letting insights and clarity emerge. And to complete our practice today, I'd like to invite you to join me in a closing prayer for peace. This is a prayer that is said on the 64th day of the season of nonviolence. Every day, I join others in this prayer for world peace. With each kind thought, each choice for nonviolence, we plant a seed that shall bloom to bring forth rich fruit in its season. Together, friend, we till the soil and plant the seeds that all creation may sing for joy and dance in the garden of peace. May our prayers and practices during this season be but the beginning of a new culture of peace, security, and joy that shall endure unto our children's children's children.
State Representative Matthew LoPresti, PhD, is beginning his first session in the Hawaii State House, currently serving as Vice Chair of the House Transportation Committee and member of Education, Higher Education, Labor, and Public Employment Committees, and the Oahu Metropolitan Planning Organization. Representative LoPresti is chair of the Asian Studies program at Hawaii Pacific University and has been teaching philosophy since 1999. While at HPU since 2004, he has expanded his teaching to include courses in religious studies and the interdisciplinary humanities. State Representative Matthew LoPresti.
Aloha, I'm State Representative Matt LoPresti, and I also serve as a professor of philosophy, specifically South Asian philosophy, and I'm honored to be able to present a legislative certificate for the 16th annual celebration of Mahatma Gandhi Day of International Peace. You know, Gandhi and his teachings, two of the main teachings that I like to celebrate and teach about and share are his views on ahimsa and his views on satyagraha. Ahimsa, of course, means nonviolence, and it's not just nonviolence in a physical sense. It can also be in just a relational, conversational sense, that we respect one another, that we listen to one another, that we're open to being changed by another's views. Without that kind of honesty and openness, what we end up doing is just waiting to talk and waiting to give our perspective on something instead of really hearing and listening and absorbing what others have to say on any number of topics. And that's so important in politics. Satyagraha, of course, was super important for the independence movement of India that Gandhi helped as a leader in the 1940s. And Satyagraha is, of course, the insistence on truth, that the way of truth shall light the way to justice, to a more just society. And I think we can all learn from that. In fact, American civil rights leaders had learned from that and adopted some of his views. And of course, we all know about nonviolent action that he taught and promoted, and that helped change the world, and in particular helped change our nation to be a more just society. I'd like to read from you the certificate that I helped put together in honor of this day and its celebration. Whereas the state of Hawaii congratulates the Gandhi International Institute for Peace on the 152nd anniversary of Mahatma Gandhi's birth, one of the most influential political and spiritual leaders of our times. And whereas he was widely known as Saint Mahatma Gandhi, pioneered Satyagraha, a philosophy of resistance to tyranny through peaceful, nonviolent, civil disobedience. This continues to resonate in the hearts of countless world leaders, justice seekers, and individuals today. And whereas from his time as a young British-trained lawyer in South Africa to his role as a pioneering community organizer in India, Mahatma Gandhi led expansive campaigns to ease poverty, increase women's rights, build religious and ethnic amity, and end untouchability, and most notably establish India's national independence from former British rule. And whereas Dr. Raj Kumar has laid the foundation for the Gandhi International Institute for Peace when the Twin Towers of the New York World Trade Center were attacked by terrorists on September 11, 2001. And since then, the Gandhi Institute for Peace has been raising awareness about peace and nonviolence in Hawaii and around the world. And whereas, in tribute to Mahatma Gandhi, who was born in Porbandar, India on October 2, 1869, the United Nations General Assembly passed a resolution on June 15, 2007, declaring October 2nd as International Day of Nonviolence. And whereas, similarly in 2015, the 26th legislature of the state of Hawaii and Governor David Ige unanimously passed Act 5, declaring October 2nd as Mahatma Gandhi Day in Hawaii, helps to raise awareness of and support for human dignity and peaceful resolution, and furtherance of a harmonious, safe, and compassionate society. Now, therefore, the House of the 21st Legislature of the State of Hawaii hereby congratulates and honors the Gandhi Institute for Peace on its October 2nd, 2021 virtual program in observance of the institution's 16th annual celebration of Mahatma Gandhi Day and the International Day of Nonviolence. Congratulations. Thank you to everyone for all you do to help keep that message alive in the world. And I'd like to end with personal inspiration that I get from one of his most famous quotes, which is that you should be the change that you want to see in the world. That has inspired me to run for office. It has inspired me to help my community. It has inspired many people that I know to step forward at a time when something is needed and somebody needed to stand up and say something and fight for what is right. We all need to be the change that we want to see in the world. We can't just wait for it to change. It's not going to change without us doing that. Thank you, and aloha. Namaste.
Aloha. I'm pleased to extend my warmest greetings to all who will commemorate this day with meditation, music, and dance as we pay homage to a man who shared a message of peace and nonviolence, a message that resonated with people all the world over. The ongoing pandemic continues to prevent us from gathering and enjoying this day in person, but that will not stop the event's participants from sharing Mahatma's words and deeds that taught us that nonviolence can be a powerful solution to achieving peace and harmony. In Hawaii, we can also draw inspiration from the man who developed the Gandhi International Institute for Peace in our island home. It was Dr. Kumar who laid the foundation for the Institute following that day of violence that shook not just this country, but around the world, the day that the Twin Towers in New York fell to a terrorist attack, along with the horrific incidents at the Pentagon and in a field in Pennsylvania. From that tragedy came this annual event in which we honor Mahatma and recognize this day as an International Day of Nonviolence. I join with all of you as this event shares the message of the Mahatma, quote, "Nonviolence is an active force of the highest order," close quote. Be well, be safe, and be at peace. With aloha, Ed Case, Congressman Ed Case, Hawaii, 1st District.
Renee Tillotson founded Still and Moving Center, inspired by the joy she experiences in the practice of Veena, and from the lifelong learning she's gained at the Institute of World Culture in Santa Barbara, California. She loves taking part in conversations that merge philosophical, spiritual, and scientific thought with a lifestyle of compassion. Her husband, Cliff, a lifelong student of Gandhi's teachings, is particularly drawn to the life of service through action, the life of a karma yogan, as exemplified by Gandhiji. Their organization, Still and Moving Center, aspires to serve the community, support the earth and its creatures, and always be filled with laughter and friendship. Today, we join Renee and Cliff in a lively discussion with Dr. Veena Howard. Dr. Veena Howard, PhD, is Associate Professor of Asian Religious Traditions in the Department of Philosophy at California State University, Fresno. She is also the coordinator of the Peace and Conflict Studies program. She teaches and researches Asian religious traditions, Gandhi's philosophy, animal ethics, and gender issues in Indian philosophy. Dr. Howard is currently involved in the SDG Academy, helping develop the Ethics in Action, massive open online course on Hindu environmental ethics and gender. Renee and Cliff Tillotson in a discussion with Dr. Veena Howard.
Aloha, Veena, and my husband Cliff Tillotson. I'm Renee Tillotson. Well, Cliff and I are both pretty much lifelong students of Gandhi's throughout our adult lives, and we both had the opportunity to study Gandhian thought under Professor Raghavana Iyer at UC Santa Barbara. He is the author of a book entitled The Moral and Political Thought of Mahatma Gandhi.
We took a lot of classes on Gandhi together and did a lot of study of Gandhi's ideas, and always been inspired by his example.
You guys are so lucky to study with Dr. Iyer. What a great fortune to have had the opportunity. His book is brilliant.
Well, Cliff has found a passage of Gandhi's actually in this same book, The Moral and Political Thought of Mahatma Gandhi. If I could ask you to start us off, it's talking about this still small voice.
It seems to me that this topic is kind of an unusual one, this idea of the still small voice, and I think is very appropriate because we're living in a time right now where there's so many loud external voices. What Gandhi followed throughout his entire life politically was a voice inside himself. In this time of tumult that we have right now, this is probably a very good theme to focus on. For me, the voice of God, of conscience, of truth, or the inner voice, or the still small voice, mean one and the same thing. I saw no form. I have never tried, for I have always believed God to be without form. But what I did hear was like a voice from afar and yet quite near. It was as unmistakable as some human voice, definitely speaking to me and irresistible. I was not dreaming at the time I heard the voice. The hearing of the voice was preceded by a terrific struggle within me. Suddenly, the voice came upon me. I listened and made certain it was the voice, and the struggle ceased. I was calm. The determination was made accordingly. The date and the hour of the fast were fixed. I have no further evidence to convince the skeptic. He is free to say that it was self-delusion or hallucination. It may well have been so. I can offer no proof to the contrary, but I can say this, that not the unanimous verdict of the whole world against me could shake me from the belief that what I heard was the true voice of God.
How did this influence Gandhi when he heard this voice? It sounds like from that he heard it before fasting. I imagine there were other times in his life. It wasn't a single occurrence.
This is a very powerful of his own words when he's really trying to articulate something which is more real than anything outside real. And now you want me to explain it in words. So he's trying to really carefully trying to use the words to communicate. However, scholars and skeptics and critics continue to question what he was really hearing, because he called it is a voice of a tyrant. It's like, something that comes on you that you're unable to resist. You're so strong. It's not like a rational mind, whether I should do this or do this. It is the clear truth. So it really relates to what Gandhi said, what Cliff, you read, God, truth, and conscience, right? The three things you said, God, truth, and conscience. If we don't talk about God, some of people are non-theistic or atheistic or agnostic, then they all can talk about conscience, right? My conscience says, and we all use the word, if we have a clear conscience, it's very difficult to hear. And we all have it. He said, all of us can have access to that voice. It's not Gandhi's monopoly on that voice. And all mystics in the world, or teachers, saints, Mahatmas will say that. It is when all becomes quiet, what Upanishads talks about. Who makes the mind think? Mind is a thinker, but who makes this mind think? That is behind that. And that is when we are completely in silence, complete, not just quietness. When we know we are in quiet, but inside our chatter is going on so loud. It's complete. And I don't know how to explain it unless you have experienced it. And I'm sure we have glimpse of that. And what happens with him, it becomes when he is on a very critical juncture in life, when he is helpless, when he doesn't know, like you're standing on a fork, you don't know this way is the right or this way is right. And they both seem right and both seem wrong, because you're being pressured by both. He was in politics. One of his biographer who met with him, Vincent Sheen, he talked about to him about the inner voice. And even before the Salt March, he became quiet for 6 months. Gandhi said he didn't know what to do, how to really bring the people an awakening, right? There's so many ways you can do it. What could be the right way to mobilize a movement? I mean, how do you come about it? He says, then finally he had this guidance, this voice, we should do this. This happened with also in early 1930s when he fasted for the untouchables, separate electorate. He said, this inner voice said, go on fast. Then he asked, this time was not just simply hearing, he had a dialogue with the voice. How long should I fast? oh master, oh madam, whoever, or God or truth, how long should I fast? And the voice clearly said 21 days. So this time was not a one command, it was a dialogue because it required more clarification.
One of my curiosities is that if Gandhi points to the idea that all of us have access to this inner voice of wisdom within ourselves, how do we know when we're actually hearing this true inner voice versus when we might just be having a whim? I mean, we all get pulled by this and that, and that's part of what Cliff, you were mentioning. We don't want to be pulled by outside voices, but sometimes we just have this little, oh, I really feel like having ice cream now, and this is so much different and higher than.
It's always relation with, answer to some call, answer to some personal dilemma, which even as a wise person, we are unable to use our rational faculties to do that. So it happens, you have to read in light of the Upanishads and the Bhagavad Gita. You have to suspend your reason for that moment. You have to suspend your feeling, oh, I feel like having this, or I feel like I should take this path. It's unequivocal. That voice is no, me, he, it just is there. No one can explain it unless you have a glimpse of it. And how you get it through, it's like, how do I get it, right? We have the same question for all teachers, all texts, and how do I know this truth? And the recipe is for all of us the same, inner purification. And the silence is the shutting down the chatter of the mind and even reason. Because if I'm reasoning, oh, what would this will do to the salt march, or maybe people won't show up, then what I will do, and then that is still on the reason plane. It has to go completely suspend and surrender. And when surrender comes, clarity comes. Gandhi was very much about clarity. When we are clear in our mind, when we're clear in ourselves and clear in our conscience, then only then this voice appears. So you have, it's always there. You can't hear that. That's what we call little inner voice, because you have to calm all that down. And once that's there, and then I think you can go to different people all over the world. They will say, some people say, God spoke to me, I should do this. So it's not just Gandhi's monopoly on that inner voice, but Gandhi is one of the examples that he was what he thought, what he meant. He lived what he taught. So that kind of synergy in all aspects of mind, body, words, speech, actions, then clarity emerges. So the voice of truth, or still little inner voice, always results in something pure and good. It always has to be in the service of good, service of others, and has to bring goodness in the world. Otherwise, it's not a voice of truth. That's what I wanted to add with the quote from Gandhi. Having made a ceaseless effort to attain self-purification, I have developed some little capacity to hear correctly and clearly the still small voice within. Thank you.
Dance when you're broken open. Dance if you've torn the bandage off. Dance in the middle of the fighting, dance in your blood. Dance when you're perfectly free. A beautiful quote by Rumi. Exemplifies Roger Sinha's singular choreographic journey. Choreographer, dancer, artistic director, and founder of the company Sinha Dance, Roger Sinha is one of the pioneers in the field of contemporary dance fused with non-Western cultural practices. Freely inspired by the sophisticated gestural aesthetic of Indian classical dance, Bharatanatyam, Roger also draws inspiration from his personal struggles related to questions of mixed cultural identity and experiences with racism. The following 3 segments, performed in the snow and the falling leaves, constricted in space, show Roger portraying a small voice embodied in movement. The winter and fall scenery evoke nostalgia and conscience Unable to speak with his voice, his conscience speaks in movement, seeming to embody our theme today. Human voice can never reach the distance that is covered by the still, small voice of conscience. Roger Sinha.
In a soft step serenade, each one fades quicker, harder to remember. So we close our eyes tighter, even more than yesterday, when the unravel of wool of your memory became one gentle ball of a single strand, with no beginning you confide, but an end we both know. So we will step together, hold the sky up enough to light the leaf, hush space to hug and dance our words in our soft step serenade, until the end of the strand finds the beginning again.
Ramdas is a professor of religion at the University of Hawaii at Manao, where he's been teaching for more than 3 decades. Prior to entering higher education, he was a Hindu sadhu, an ascetic monk, for nearly 10 years in India. While there, the study and practice of the Ashtanga Yoga system was an integral part of his life, and it remains a focus of much of his continuing education and teaching at UH. Professor Ramdas.
Gandhi inspired us and continues to inspire us through his actions, his words, his wisdom, his life. He never thought of himself as a wise or liberated being, but merely as a traveler on the path to divine realization and divine liberation. 2 important tools he learned as he progressed on this path were devotion and fearlessness. And both of these provided him a great deal of strength. In fact, these are what gave him the power to commit to and to stay focused on his goals and to follow truth and nonviolence as he understood and experienced them, no matter what obstacles he faced. Another powerful tool that made his journey possible was his inner sadhana, and that's the daily, regular set of spiritual practices that he undertook. They were central to his existence, for they nourished his inner being. He once said that no matter what you do, you should do it as a part of your sadhana. You should make it part of your sadhana. and thereby making every action, every thought, every word an offering to the divine. Among the more significant elements of his sadhana were constant remembrance of the divine, for which he used the name Ram, and his regular Monday practice of silence, actually Monday evening until Tuesday evening. This is when he really had the opportunity to plumb the depths of his being, to better listen to and then follow the divine consciousness within and the guidance that it would give him. For Gandhi, these moments are what Thomas Merton is referring to in his words. In silence, God ceases to be an object, but becomes an experience. Through his sadhana, Gandhi, and his silence, Gandhi was able to take his goals of truth and nonviolence and actuate them in his life. And he encouraged all his followers to do the same. He could ask this of them because he saw and believed that we are all of the same essence and being and ability. So we all need to realize that when we lie to or hurt any being, we're doing it to ourselves. To stop the suffering in the world, we must first begin by stop lying to ourselves and hurting ourselves, such as when we justify our greed, our anger, our jealousy, our animosities and attachment to people and things, lyingly telling ourselves these are all okay and justified. We hurt ourselves in so many ways. The way we treat our bodies by not eating healthy food or exercising or living a healthy lifestyle. The way we damage our minds by not focusing on those things that will help us become better human beings and make the world a better place. And instead simply use intoxicants to dull our consciousnesses so that we no longer perceive right from wrong. The way we hurt our emotional beings by becoming obsessed with the need for constant sensual highs and experiences. When we allow ourselves to become so infatuated and then fixated on the need for these highs and for people and things constantly. And being in that state, we can never be at peace or content with any of our moments. Here, especially Gandhi's practice of silence is a powerful tool. These are but a few of the many things that Gandhi sought to teach us in his life. Martin Luther King once noted of him, if humanity is to progress, Gandhi is inescapable. He lived, thought, acted, and inspired by the vision of humanity toward a world of peace, ever evolving towards a world of peace and harmony. Important thoughts. The more we can draw inspiration from and follow Mahatma Gandhi's example, the stronger and more fearless we can become, and the closer we can get to the goal of true peace and a loving relationship with the divine and all of reality.
Professor Marc Jason Gilbert received a PhD in history from UCLA in 1978, and for many years thereafter was professor of history and co-director of programs in South and Southeast Asia in the university system of Georgia. Since 2006, he has been the holder of the National Endowment for the Humanities, supported endowed chair in world history at Hawaii Pacific University. From the outset of his career, he has sought to bring a global dimension to South and Southeast Asian history in numerous articles, chapters, and books, and monographs. He is a past president of the World History Association and of the Southeast Conference of the Association of Asian Studies, and organizer of the international academic conferences in Cambodia, China, Vietnam, and the United States. Professor Marc Jason Gilbert.
Hi, my name is Marc Gilbert. I'm a professor emeritus at Hawaii Pacific University, and I'd like to talk to you for a minute about Gandhi's commitment to environmentalism, not only just peace, but peace for our planet. I've spent much of my life in India and in East Africa looking at self-help organizations that were founded by Gandhian groups or on the Gandhian model. And all of them were based on sustainability as well as social justice. And whenever I think of them, I always think of a story that Arun Gandhi, Gandhi's grandson, always likes to talk about at public groups. And that is an incident between him and his grandfather when he was a very young boy. Arun was at school and would come home every night, and he'd be carrying his books and his school pencil. In those days, students had very little access to pencils and pens, and Arun would follow a rule, which was you have to use your pencil until it simply can't be used anymore. Well, he had one, but it wasn't a maximum pencil to him, but he was tired of using an increasingly shorter pencil. So on the way home one night, he threw it away. As soon as he came in, his grandfather looked at him and said, "Where's your pencil?" And he said, "I threw it away on the way home." And Gandhi looked at him and said, "Do you know how much of the earth is used up by a pencil? The trees that have to get cut down in order to make its shaft, the earth that has to be disturbed to come up with the chemicals or minerals that go in its lead. Can you think about something other than yourself when you think about the material things that you use?" And Arun said, "I'm sorry." And Gandhiji said, "Well, what are you going to do about it?" And he said, I don't know. And he said, you're going to walk back to your school and find where you threw away your pencil and then come home. And he said, "But it's dark outside now." And he said, "Go get the pencil." You know, we hear a lot about be the change you want to be. I think in environmentalism, through Gandhi, we know, just pick up the pencil, do your thing for the earth and for humanity. Thank you.
The Senate recognizes and congratulates the Gandhi International Institute for Peace upon the 16th annual celebration of Mahatma Gandhi Day and the International Day of Nonviolence in Hawaii. Mohandas Karamchand Gandhi, also known as Mahatma, was born on October 2, 1869. He became the leader of Indian nationalism in British-ruled India and led India to independence through the pioneering use of nonviolent civil disobedience and passive resistance, inspiring various political leaders and civil rights movements across the world to the present day. Gandhi is commemorated annually on October 2nd with a national holiday in India and with the International Day of Nonviolence Worldwide, established by the United Nations General Assembly on June 15, 2007, by the adoption of Resolution A/RES/61/271. The resolution affirms, quote, "the universal relevance of the principle of nonviolence," close quote, and the desire, quote, "to secure a culture of peace, tolerance, understanding, and nonviolence," close quote. The International Day is an occasion to, quote, "disseminate the message of nonviolence, including through education and public awareness," close quote. In Hawaii, the Gandhi International Institute for Peace was founded by Kumar, PhD, with a mission to provide information, consultation, education, and training to resolve conflict in a nonviolent manner. An initial effort to promote public awareness was a request to the legislature of the state of Hawaii to commemorate the inspiration, tolerance, and enduring legacy of Mohandas Gandhi on the date of his birth. During the regular session of 2015, the 28th legislature of the state of Hawaii unanimously adopted Senate Bill 322, proposing to designate October 2nd of each year as, quote, Mohandas Karamchand Gandhi Day, close quote, as a day of recognition and observance, but not a state holiday. On April 9, 2015, Governor David Y. Ige signed the bill into law as Act 5 in 2015, making Hawaii the first state in the nation and in the Union to so honor Gandhi. October 2nd, 2021 marks the 152nd birthday of Mohandas Gandhi, the 16th annual observation of International Day of Nonviolence, and the 7th celebration of Mahatma Gandhi Day in Hawaii. The program is being co-hosted with Still and Moving Center. The theme of the 2021 celebration event is, quote, "The human voice can never reach the distance that is covered by the still, small voice of conscience," close quote, Mahatma Gandhi. During the regular session of 2016, the 28th Legislature of the State of Hawaii unanimously adopted Senate Concurrent Resolution 20, SDI HD1, to formally establish a sister state relationship between the State of Hawaii of the United States of America and the State of Goa of the Republic of India, further honoring the legacy of Gandhi and promoting international peace and goodwill among people through travel, culture, and the arts, education, and economic relations. After considerable preparations, the formal signing ceremony for the Hawaii-Goa sister state relation by representatives of two governments was held in Honolulu on September 28, 2018. The Senate for the 31st Legislature of the State of Hawaii hereby recognizes and congratulates the Gandhi International Institute for Peace for its leadership in advocating for and achieving the establishment of October 2nd as Mohandas Karamchand Gandhi Day in Hawaii, and the establishment of a sister state relation between the state of Goa and the state of Hawaii, acknowledges that it is fitting that persons who embody the Aloha spirit actively serve to champion the cause of nonviolence and the establishment of a culture of peace through for continued success and achievement by the Gandhi International Institute for Peace in the fulfillment of its mission consistent with honoring the legacy of Mahatma Gandhi. This done on the second day of October 2021, State Capital, Honolulu, Hawaii. Signed by Brian T. Taniguchi, sponsoring Senator, Mike Gabbard, sponsoring Senator, Ronald D. Kouchi, President of the Senate, and Carol Taniguchi, Clerk of the Senate.
Still in Moving Centers, Willow Chang is committed to the creative process, learning experience, and sacred practice. A lifelong singer and dancer, her multidisciplined approach has taken her to teach and perform worldwide. Originally trained in hula under Kumu Alicia Smith, Willow has spent the past 27 years focused on Middle Eastern, Northern African dances, as well as classical Indian dance, Butoh, Bollywood, tango, flamenco, Balinese, and modern. In this performance, Edge of Primitive, choreographed by Willow Chang, the video is edited by Masikanjali and it is set to the music of Annie Lennox. Please welcome Ms. Willow Chang.
to sleep. Pray to God our hopes to keep. Take our fears and make us strong. Lead us to where we belong. And let it all go by. All go by.
Mahalo to everyone for joining us today on this 16th celebration of International Day of Nonviolence and Mahatma Gandhi Day. We would like to thank all of our speakers and performers for their wisdom, guidance, and enlightenment. And in particular, we would like to thank the Gandhi International Institute for Peace for spearheading this event, and Still and Moving Center for organizing and directing it. Here to deliver our closing remarks, Dr. Kahu Kaleo Patterson is the longtime president of the Pacific Justice and Reconciliation Center, a Hawaiian priest in the Episcopal Church, and a professor of peace studies and social work. Active in international human rights, Dr. Patterson has served as a Church World Service Delegate to the United Nations General Assemblies, forums, and meetings related to racism, Indigenous peoples, and Hawaiian sovereignty. In 1993, Dr. Patterson was the recipient of the Church of the Crossroads Martin Luther King Jr. Award, and many other awards and recognitions for his work in reconciliation, Hawaiian environmental and social justice, peace, and nonviolence. Today, Dr. Patterson is active in prison and criminal justice reform as the prison chaplain of the Episcopal Churches of Hawaii. We would like to think that through initiatives like this one, to keep Gandhi's legacy alive, that we have stirred your still small voice of conscience into action. Mahalo and namaste.
Aloha. Queen Liliuokalani said, all things in this world, there is two, but in heaven, there is but one. She was referring, I believe, to the choices and the voices that we hear within. Now, in her last Twitter message, Maya Angelou, before ascending to heaven, she wrote, "Listen to yourself. And in that quietude, you might hear the voice of God." Now, we've been listening to many voices today in this webinar on Gandhi, his birthday today. Many voices today, many words, many thoughts, and many expressions of gratitude and remembrance for the life and legacy of Mahatma Gandhi. The legacy of Gandhi, of which well spoken and expressed in our gathering today, brings to mind the truth that out of suffering and hardship comes great clarity and compassion. So to add to our hopeful vision of humanity and our soul to increase in purpose and resolve, yes, we reflect. Now Gandhi said, you cannot lead a true life without suffering. And yes, these have been days and times of tremendous suffering, great suffering in the world. A global pandemic, 18 months now. COVID-19 still with us, and now the Delta variant, continuing fear and uncertainty. And now recently, in recent weeks, we are seeing an end to American aggression in Afghanistan. This has been in the news. An end to war, but not the end to violence, and wars and rumors of war will continue throughout the world and impacting women and children the most. We must lift up prayers for the women and children of the world. When we reflect on the life of Gandhi, we know he was no stranger to disease, plagues, pandemics, and wars. There was in particular the influenza pandemic of 1918 and 1919, commonly referred to as the Spanish flu, which caused tens of millions of deaths around the world and possibly close to 20 million deaths in India alone. India, the worst hit country back in those days. Now, Gandhi himself suffered from the debilitating effects of the disease. Well, by this time already known, he was known as Mahatma, Gandhi was still engaging in major political and social activities. We should take this into account as the legacy of Gandhi for us today. Today, a day of great suffering and sorrow, that we can pray and hope, but that we can also live and be active as Gandhi has shown us in history. We too, all of us, followers of Gandhi, should be engaging in major political and social activities. This is the time to rise up and not to lay down. That is the most honorable way to remember Gandhi, not simply with words of adoration, but actions and deeds that lead and lend to the transformation of the world in the journey that we all have together, the journey from violence to nonviolence in this world. Earlier in his life in 1904, we remember how Gandhi fought against the bubonic plague in South Africa. He even desired to become a doctor and a healer. Anyone who observes the rules of health will not need to knock the doors of doctors from day to day, said Gandhi. Yes, he did much to advocate and was very active in pursuing health for the poor and the sick. His interest in health, hygiene, nutrition, and diseases was as great as his interest in politics. He insisted that adopting preventative measures for diseases was better than treatment. He was also a firm believer of naturopathy and conducted experiments related to diet and fasting. He always believed that it was important to understand what caused the diseases and then remove that very cause rather than falling ill and then attempting to treat it with excessive medication. These days, the voice of Gandhi calls to us within to pursue justice in all aspects of society and to restore the dignity of life and humanity in and for all. In this quote from Liliuokalani, who fought against both diseases and injustices of imperialism here in Hawaii, which, by the way, resulted in a 90% collapse of the Hawaiian population by 1893. Great suffering occurring in Hawaii. In this quote, we can hear the voice of Mahatma Gandhi. Listen to what the Queen says. She says, the way to lose an earthly kingdom is to be inflexible, intolerant, and prejudicial. Another way is to be too flexible, intolerant, tolerant of too many wrongs, and without judgment at all. It is a razor's edge. It is the width of a blade of pili grass, Queen Liliuokalani. Today, may we be united in our efforts to embody the teachings, practices, and actions of Mahatma Gandhi, who has left for us and the world a legacy, a blueprint for social transformation and change. And now we are all part of that legacy to work for justice and reconciliation, to create a culture of peace and nonviolence for the children of the world. We begin by sharing love. And there is a Hawaiian saying that I will leave you with. He ohu ke aloha, a ohe kuahivi kau ole. Love is a mist, and there is no mountaintop that it does not settle upon. Where love comes to all. Thank you, everyone.